Welcome to the Happy Mama Movement podcast. I'm Amy Taylor-Kabbaz, mama, journalist, coach, and founder of Mama Rising. This podcast is a space of community and collaboration. We gather stories of matrescence, motherhood, womanhood, and change told by our Mama Rising coaches and mothers around the globe, in the knowing that through our stories, we can begin to heal and change the way the world sees, values, and supports mothers everywhere. So, welcome to the Happy Mama Movement. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. What I have learned over the last 15 years of sharing my story about becoming a mother and the ongoing experience of matrescence is that stories heal. But what I've also seen is we need those stories to be in so many different places. We need them to be in our movies, in our music, and, as you're about to hear, with an incredibly articulate and amazing mother from Melbourne, we need them to be on our stages and in our cultural narrative. That's what this podcast is all about. It's an interview with an incredible mother, Jayde, who is a playwright and had the experience of birthing in a hospital system where she had to really advocate for what she wanted, what that brought out of her, and how that shaped and formed her experience of becoming a mother. Like I said, this is something that I believe we all need to hear and see more and more. Stories that tell us and reflect back to us our experiences of becoming a mother, not only for us, but for future generations of people who are going to be parents. The power of our stories needs to be seen and heard to really transform our culture around motherhood. You will love this interview with Jayde. She is clear and precise and feisty, and I finished this interview feeling incredibly inspired to make sure that our stories are told in all places and in all ways so that we can come together and change it for future generations. Enjoy. Jayde, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for jumping on with me and sharing your story with everybody today.
Thank you, Amy. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much for including me in this great, this really important podcast. The work you do is just so vital.
Thank you. I was just saying to you before we hit record, I love how over the last 10 years of me doing this work in more, really, I've begun to see this exploration of different aspects of becoming a mother in so many different ways, in different art, in music, in film, in books, in podcasts, and now with what you're doing in this incredible play that you've put together. It's really exciting because when we need something to change, we need it to be in all aspects of our life, all aspects of our culture, to be able to really permeate into those different areas and make real change. So I wanted to start by saying I'm so excited that you're doing this. So for everybody who is just listening here now, explain to us where this was birthed, this play that you've written and the story that it tells.
Yeah, sure. So Ripening is a play about what it takes to become a mother, and this all came about from my experience of becoming a mother with my first child. So the play very much mirrors my lived experience. So I was approaching the 41-week mark, and I was looking at an induction. And after the research I'd done, that was something that I really didn't want to do. I just felt that wasn't right for me and my baby, unless there was a medical reason why. I just couldn't see why I should have to have my baby kind of forced out of me. That was how I kind of understood it.
Mm.
And part of the reason I really didn't want to have an induction and didn't want to have unnecessary medical intervention or pain relief was because I'd done a lot of research around breastfeeding, and I really wanted to breastfeed. And I'd done Dr. Robin Thompson's course around gentle breastfeeding methods that was born out of her PhD research, and there was so much about that made sense to me. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to try. I want to try everything I possibly can to make this happen. And what I learned was that if you have these medical interventions, it impacts on the ability for you to breastfeed, or the likelihood of you successfully breastfeeding. So if you have an epidural, like that's still in your baby's system when it comes out, and so it might be too sleepy to kind of latch on, et cetera, et cetera. So I was like, okay, great, I understand all that. And then they also talked in the education about these training modules, by the way. So they talked in the training modules about um, the cascade of interventions. And when I started to learn about that, that sounded scary. And I thought, no, that is not the experience I want. I was really imagining becoming a mother as having like a spiritual dimension, and I know how that sounds. Like some people might think that sounds kind of, a bit woo woo. But for me, it's like, becoming a mother is not just about the like literal, I have a baby. It's also like, I just had this really strong sense that something big had to change inside of me, and that I had to meet something bigger than myself and something beyond
Mm.
me. And I felt that intervention process would probably prevent me from having that experience that took me into probably what our ancestors experienced. It's something that
Mm.
connects us across the generations. So when I started to do research around that, I started to learn about how prevalent birth trauma was as a result of unnecessary medical interventions, and particularly induction of labor. And I also, when I was pregnant, which many people I imagine listening to this may have experienced this too, as soon as you become pregnant, everyone wants to tell you their horror stories.
Mm.
And whilst that can be really important and healing and cathartic, if you're about to have a baby, it's not the best thing in the world. It can be quite off putting, and you don't know what to do with that. And I thought a lot about how unfair it was that so many women, because of the hospital system, may have had that experience taken away from them of having that love bomb, oxytocin love bomb, or having that experience where they learnt something about themselves. They dug deeper than they've ever had to dig before. Like, if you just kind of get whisked away with the epidural and, so you can stay in your right frame of mind, you don't get to have that transformative experience. And when this midwife that saw me through my my epic labor, um, she said to me at the end, "Do you know what? You're going to draw on this experience when your baby is crying in the middle of the night for the millionth time. You will draw on this experience of your birth because you had it the way you wanted to have it, and you were strong, and you really tried to, you know, to kind of invest in what that could offer you." And that really stuck with me. And then I thought about how unfair it was that if you didn't have that experience, that what would you draw from? If you had a traumatic birth, what on earth would you draw from in those moments where it is as hard as it gets? And so it was all of those experiences and all of those things and all those conversations that led me to writing this play. Because I also felt strongly that, I'm an academic, like I in theatre, I'm an academic, I research, like that's easy for me. That is what I do. The amount of research that I had to do to come to the understanding I came to, I thought, wow, what is someone who's not in this line of work going to do? You shouldn't have to have a PhD to be able to have a baby in
Oh.
a physiologically natural way. Like that should not be a requirement. It should be that if
Mm.
that's what you want to do, you can go ahead and do that. The system will support you. And that was not my experience. So all of those things. So for me, theatre is just as much about reflecting who we want to be as it is reflecting who we are. And so creating this play was about kind of shining a light on the problems, the challenges, the horror stories, but also shining a bigger light on the success stories and the fact that it is possible and giving people hope, because too often we sort of get bogged down in the horror stories and the challenge of this of what we have to work with, and sometimes we forget to kind of lift up the positive stories and remember that it is possible. We're amazing. We can do this.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love the way that when I was reading about the play, you were talking about how when we step into that hospital system, there is this arbitrary, in a way, deadline that
Yeah.
we are put on. You know, you hit that 41-week mark, or the baby has a deadline, your body has a deadline. There is a timeline and a schedule in our current system that we are forced to fit into. And I know everyone who's, gotten to that 40, 41, 42-week mark and has had to have those conversations with the hospital system. It feels so disempowering to have somebody in a position of power in
Mhm.
that medical system put that timeline on you. It is so incredibly disrespectful to this whole process, isn't it?
It really is. And I mean, it's just not the way nature works
Yeah,
either. Like,
exactly.
it's a really tricky thing because, if you go to hospital, usually you're sick, you're unwell, and so time is of the essence. And so
Mm.
I understand how it's gotten the way it's gotten, because for most illnesses and ailments, yeah, you do want to get in there quick and you do want to deal with things swiftly, and there are timelines, but birth is not an illness. Like, giving birth is
Mm.
not an illness. So it has a different tempo and rhythm, and it has rhythm. This is the other thing. This is why
Mm.
it's such a great thing to put on the stage, because for me, theatre is about the experience. It's about getting inside the experience of somebody. And something that came up in the staged reading was that we did last year was that um, even people who had never had a baby, who were never going to have a baby, they sort of got this sort of experience of like that rhythm of what it is to go through labor, and just like kind of the awesome, we throw that word around a lot these days, but the awesome nature of that, and what respecting that rhythm and following that rhythm, how that can kind of just take us somewhere else.
Mm.
So yeah, like it's but and just on the time thing, when you're writing a play, having a deadline is actually useful. Like, for a
Yes.
play, the baby needs to come out at some point. So like dramaturgically, that was really great because it gave a lot of stakes for the characters, and like, things had to keep ticking along. But we've been really clear in the play to differentiate between um, when this main character is talking with her baby, and in her kind of, we're creating this sort of world where she's got her like inner sanctum. It's like she's in a sort of womb with her baby, and time is kind of fluid, and things just sort of, you know all on her terms. And then she steps into the real world, and it's just the time of things. It's just, everything just pushes through, and the conversations, people talk through her, that she doesn't feel heard. And then she has this nightmare sequence where it's all about time. Like, there's this whole section about, you got to hurry up now, hurry up, love. You're taking your time. We don't like that. We need to hurry things along. Like, that idea of time is yeah, time and being listened to are the central themes of this play.
Oh, I wish
Yeah.
I could see it. For those who are listening, this is about to premiere in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm not in that part of Australia, and I'm desperate to come and see it. So I'm really hoping that you can take this on the road.
Fingers crossed. If I know any producers out there, if you're listening, help us do
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
It's just so incredible to me that these types of stories haven't been told.
Mm.
That, like I said at the beginning, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's exciting to see that it's starting to happen. And yet at the same time, it still makes me incredibly angry and frustrated that we are at this time in history in 2025. And these stories haven't really been told or brought into the spotlight before. I
Yeah.
know with you bringing this play to the world, you've also had these moments of having to challenge the people around you and the places to take this seriously. Can you share with us what that has been like, and the experience of bringing a story about a play about birth trauma and about the pregnancy and birth process into this world. What has that been like?
Yeah, it's been a little bit like labor. So yeah, it hasn't been easy. It was actually really hard to find a venue for this play, like to do it in a full season. It's yeah, and the part of that is just part of being in the arts. The arts are just chronically underfunded. Like theatre is chronically underfunded. But also, I did get specific feedback from some venues saying, "Oh, we're not sure what to do with how would we promote this." Like they were a bit worried about um yeah, like not finding an audience for it. And my response to that was kind of like, okay, well fine, if you don't want it, I will find somewhere else for it, because I felt very confident that it belonged somewhere. I just needed to find that place.
Mm.
But also it's sort of I don't know, I think theater is often a little bit behind the times, to be honest. Like, it takes a while for theater actually to catch up with the conversation that's going on out there in the world. And
Mm.
I do think that, there are a lot of other issues that are very challenging, that are really provocative, that are quite traumatic, that theater companies and theater venues are happy to deal with. But when it comes to birth and women's bodies and the mess of birth, and yeah, I think it just scares people off in this strange way, unless you've had a baby. So the people who are really looking out for me out there, a lot of them are fellow mothers who are like, oh my god, yes, we need this. Oh wow, this sounds amazing. So that the mamas are out there, they are rising. And
Oh, they are.
it's
That's why I
time.
called my book
It's
Mama Rising.
time.
Yes, and I feel
Yeah.
like there is this tidal wave of awareness and conversation that is happening. Um, for you personally, what is it like to see this on the stage? I know it's not sort of fully premiered while we're talking right now, but to see this being birthed and to
Yeah.
have this story out there, because it is like a pregnancy, a labor, and now everybody's about to meet your baby.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. We're almost at the pushing stage.
Exactly.
Yeah. Look, I have never felt so strongly in all my life that I had to tell this story. Um, I've written a number of plays, different shows over the years. I've been running a theatre company for over a decade, so like it's not a new activity for me. But something about this story, I couldn't let it go. It just I wrote it pretty quickly. I had some great people helping me with, some dramaturgical feedback. I had a bit of a development last year. And like for me, it's, well, I don't know how I describe it. It's in some ways it's strange because it's my story. And I'm directing it as well. So that's a whole other conversation we can have. How do you direct something you've written? But um, it's been incredible to see the actors just take this story and take it to another place and make it their own. And I guess the what a writer has to do is you take your personal experience, but then you need to find a way to make it universal. If I
Mm,
hate that word because so few things are truly universal, but for lack of a better term, it
mm,
it becomes universal once it leaves you, if that makes sense. It's sort of
mm,
like, when you give birth, it's like it's part of you, but then also the baby is its own human being. And you have to go through a similar process when you're writing theater, particularly if it's autobiographical in many ways, which this one is. It's now become something else. It's not, it came from me, but it's not me, but it has me in it,
yes.
just like a baby. And so that's been really quite special to see, and to see the other family members, if you like, the cast members and the designers interpreting it and bringing their ideas to it. It's that, like, I always say theater is a team sport, and that's what makes it so special for an audience to see, because it's not just come out of one brain. It's the result of many amazing women artists, and many of them are mothers who are in this team who are coming together. In fact, the woman playing the lead role is actually pregnant. She will
Oh,
be 8 months pregnant when we do these performances.
You're
Like,
kidding. Is this
so
her first baby?
this is her first baby. And so when I was talking about like the challenges before of trying to find the venue and all that stuff, part of me is also kind of like, but it also had to happen this way because
Yes.
she had to be 8 months pregnant to do the role. So it's sort of like, in some ways, the universe is just kind of looking out for us and it's all fine. But
Yeah. That's
yeah,
incredible, and talk
dramatic,
about a, initiation for her about
right?
what's about to come.
Right? She's so wonderful. She's like, "I am so pumped for this birth now because, she's done the play and she was with us last year in the stage reading too, so she's had time to think about it and, we had to have a big chat about like, "You sure you wanna do this? Like, you'll be really pregnant." And she's like, "No, I wanna do it." Like, she's a real go-getter and, she's amazing, and she just does the most exquisite performance in this. She really captures just I don't know, the majesty of the pregnant woman, you know?
Oh,
Pregnant
yes.
woman is just so she's just so like, yes, she waddles and she's big and she's like puffy and but she's also majestic and powerful and she has life in her and she just gets all that and she just has that in her presence on stage. And it's quite stunning. I've not seen anything quite like it. Yeah.
Oh, Jade, I love the way you speak about that. That's incredible. Going back to your experience of building up to the birth of your son,
Yeah.
with all of those deadlines and all of that pressure and everything you went through, the endless pre-labor contractions and everything,
Mm.
when you look at it now, what do you think got you through and allowed you to advocate for yourself? When you can sort of look back at it
Mhm.
from this point now?
Um, Part of it was education. So, that course I talked about. I can't recommend Rhea Dempsey's book more highly, Birth with Confidence, and also her new one, Beyond the Birth Plan, is a must read. Just those kinds of things, just particularly Birth with Confidence was like, it was grounding. That book is so grounding and it's so real about
Mm,
like, this is what it's going to be like. Don't think it's going to be a walk in the park that's pain free. Like, you've got to
mm,
face the fact that it will be painful, and how are you going to deal with it? And
mm,
are you going to have people around you that are going to be in your corner and will support you? So,
mm,
I gave my husband a chapter to read on being a birth partner. And although that sounds kind of funny now, like, actually him being on board and getting real about what was about to happen was a really important part of the success story, because he did have to advocate for me. They were trying to give me gas and pain relief and whatever as soon as I walked in the door, because my waters broke, so I had no cushioning there. He was a really big baby, I later found out. So it was a really intense, long labor. And it took a while for them to realize, the midwives, that, oh, I was in it for the long run and you're not going to convince me. And once they got that message, boom, we were on, and they were helping me. They were helping me do my spinning
wow.
babies inversions and all that between contractions. And so
Mm,
those things helped. Yeah, spinning babies helped massively. If anyone doesn't know what
mm,
that is, Google it. If you're pregnant, just get on board with the three sisters and whatever they call those exercises now, because those are just like, they were just practical things to get me through. And then, it's in the play as well. There was this kind of moment where towards the end, I'd been pushing for like nearly 3 hours or something crazy like that. And there was this last moment where, they called the doctor in because they're like, oh, I think we're going to have to pull the baby out with forceps. And I was like, no, no, it's not happening. And then he said to me, you need to push your baby out on the next push, otherwise I will have to get in there. And that was all the motivation I needed. And I felt like I summoned the ancestors and the gods and the spirit of every woman who had ever lived to just get that baby out. So I was like, you are not pulling him out. I will not have that. And thank you, universe, that worked. But there's that's what I mean about like that. I was really ready for that moment where it opens up to you're connecting with something greater than yourself. And I felt that in the labor as well, like in the depths of that really intense labor in the birth pool. It was like, between those contractions, it's like you're just somewhere else. You're just
Mm.
there with the gods or something, right? Like it's just wild. And all of those, I guess it was like, yeah, it was a mindset thing going in. It was a preparation thing with knowing, being informed, making sure my husband was informed and on board, and then just going in with that plan, and then just surrendering to what Rhea Dempsey calls, I think she calls it the evolutionary regression. Like letting yourself just go down into the reptilian brain, like
Mm.
without all those steps, it wouldn't have happened the way it happened. And it was that knowing that, okay, when I get to hospital, it'll probably slow down. It'll probably be a bit of a mess for a bit. And that's just how it's going to be. And like, just that being informed piece is
Mm.
just like, we just don't think about it. Like, you don't think, why would you think about it?
That's right, and because we don't think about it, we're not spoken about it, when it does happen, there's just absolute panic. There's fear
Yeah.
because this isn't what we were expecting. This isn't what we were told. This isn't what we thought it would be. For those who have been listening for a long time, my first birth was a total disaster in that sense. It was full of fear and terrifying. But the way
Yeah.
you spoke about that moment of pushing your son out, I was blessed enough to have that with my second. She
Mm.
was breech,
Yep. Oh,
and
wow.
I was
Yep.
very lucky to be able to be given a chance to have a natural breech birth, but I found out afterwards that everybody had quietly said behind me, "Yeah, but once she's in labour and she's in the hospital, we'll just give her a cesarean." But I
Yep.
turned up at the hospital too far gone for that to happen. And that moment where they said to me, "Okay, this is the point where breech babies get stuck. You have to push her out now, otherwise we're in big trouble." I had that same moment, Jade,
Ah,
of like
yeah.
summoning everything from every lifetime. And I
Yep.
roared that baby out to the
Yeah.
point where everyone in the room was like, "Whoa," I think I actually growled or roared.
Yes, you
It gives
did.
me it gives me goosebumps remembering it.
Yep.
The fact that we don't tell women that it can be terrifying and scary and dark and you have to surrender, and then when you need it you can call on this. Like, that's what I want everybody to be able to know that is possible.
And the power of that,
Oh,
you've always done that. You've
yeah,
always got that in your back pocket.
exactly.
Yeah. And of course, I mean, I also like just have to like also say that of course it doesn't always go the way that you want it to go. Sometimes things do just happen. Sometimes there
Of
are
course.
medical emergencies. Sometimes doctors do need to do, like,
Yes.
because I'm also aware that, like, there's that in the play as well. Like, we really do try and acknowledge the fact that, yeah, sometimes it isn't what you want, but too often the narrative isn't what you've just described. It's that it always goes really badly and you need someone to help you get the baby out. It's like,
Mm,
yeah, what if the narrative was actually, no, most of the time, you're gonna do just fine, and you're gonna dig deep, and you're gonna
mm,
learn something about yourself you never knew was
mm,
there, and how
mm.
bloody empowering. And then how that sets you up for motherhood is
That's right.
right? Like, nature's got this covered. We just gotta get out
And
of
I
the way and, nature set us up.
That's it. And I deeply believe that most of the I don't want to say most because that's a bit of a grand statement, but I deeply believe that the level of unawareness
Mhm.
and fear
Yeah,
and unpreparedness that we go into it with massively contributes to so many of the struggles and challenges and problems we have in birth. Like, the
complete.
reason why I was able to do that the second and third time was because, like you, I completely educated myself differently. For the first one, I was like, here's my playlist,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to breathe, and it's all going to be fine because
Yeah,
I'm young and healthy. So the more that we can, like you've said, tell the real story, not in fear, but in education and empowerment, the more she will be able to access that. Whether there needs to be a medical intervention or not, she still will feel empowered in
that's
that
right.
moment.
She chose and she was aware and it wasn't done to her.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that dynamic as well is there in the play where we talk also about the intergenerational element as well. So kind of we sort of look at how the ways in which women's bodies have been overly medicalized for many generations now, like impacts the way you think you're able to approach birth.
That's
Um,
right.
so that's been a really important piece for us to discuss and discover in the room as well, is like, so what happens to this character's mother, and then how does that conversation inform how they relate to the grandmother, and then how does that relate to what happened to the great grandmother, who was maybe among the first generation that actually had birth brought into the hospital and controlled and contained, and what was that like, and how does that trauma ripple back down through to our bodies now? So like,
Wow.
it's not just a structural societal issue about women's bodies, gender, pregnancy, birth, all the taboos, and the hospital system, but it's also like there's familial patterns that need to be looked at. There's interpersonal kind of things that happen within families that also
Mm.
inform like how you approach birth and what kind of mother you might become and what you're carrying with you as you grow your baby and grow your idea of who you're going to become as a mother. So
Mm.
it's a very complicated thing, I think.
It really is. And for everybody who's listening who didn't have those empowering birth moments, I think there is healing in being able to hear the stories as well. Not in the sense of, I wish I could have had that, not in a longing sense, but more in a acknowledgement that perhaps the birth you had isn't always your fault. It's
Exactly.
also a part of the system, the generational stories, that everything that we have around us
Yeah,
contributes to the way that we show up in that birthing room. I
exactly.
wanted to, I think, finish by asking you, the incredible Jane Hardwick Collins, who is one of my favourite teachers in this space, an incredible midwife of many, many, many years. She
Mm,
often says, we get the birth we most need to prepare us to be the mother we need to be.
beautiful.
And I wondered how you felt about that after your own birthing experience and what you're sharing now with the very lucky mums in Melbourne, but hopefully a global audience soon.
Yeah,
What this birth experience taught you about how to be a mother.
that's such a great question. Um, I think it just fortified my sense of inner self.
Mm.
It's sort of it just deepened that core of me that was always there, but there's this depth of feeling that you get once you become a mother, and this depth, this well of strength that's just it just goes so deep. And yeah, it's an initiation, right? Like, it's an
Yes.
initiation, and I do feel like there was like a sort of spiritual development, to circle back around to that. Like, I absolutely, through that birth experience, came into that a deeper understanding of myself and my spiritual self, and um yeah, just that mature adult self, that
Mm.
little girl is, she's always in my
She's
heart, but, like,
gone.
you have to, like, what I had to, fight for and learn about, and, like, all the things I had to do to equip myself to have the experience that I wanted to have, it was what I knew I needed to become who I need to become for my son. And
Wow.
just to sort of locate that, and locate that mother archetype inside of me.
Mm.
Yeah, that my birth allowed me to do that, and I'm very, very grateful for that. And I also am just proud of myself for doing what I did to make that happen. And I really hope that I can share that with our audiences and with
Mm.
your listeners as well.
Jade, I love the way that you speak about this. You have such a beautiful way with words. I can only imagine how beautifully written this is and directed. Thank you for bringing this to the stage. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for, yeah, taking your story and your experience and being able to transform it into something that we can all learn from and watch and listen. I'll put the details of the play in the show notes. but also share details of your theatre company. And hopefully, even if somebody's listening to this in a year's time, they might be able to jump on your website and see some different performances around the country. So congratulations. I hope it goes beautifully.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's been a pleasure and so much fun to talk to you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, as always, for being a part of our global matrescence community. Please take a moment and make sure you're subscribed to this podcast in your podcast player so you can always be notified of our next episode. And if you would like to work with a coach on your own experience of matrescence, please go to mamarising.net and explore our directory of phenomenal coaches, workshop leaders, space holders and facilitators around the globe. You can also explore our Global Matrescence Foundation and consider donating so a mama in need can access the support of one of our coaches and still ensure that our coaches receive the income and support they need so they can continue to work in this way. And finally, if you would like to be a coach, a facilitator and a matrescence activist in your own community, jump on our waitlist for our next intake of the Mama Rising Facilitator Training at mamarising.net. Thank you for being here and being part of this movement. Until next week, bye.